conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2520, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. In compliance with Governor Newsom's Executive Order N-2520 and in response to the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak, the district will conduct the Board of Education's regular meeting as a teleconference. Please use the following toll-free numbers and meeting ID to call into the meeting. 1-66-9900-9128, meeting ID 846-4776-2078, passcode 516214, or join on a computer. The link is on our website and the passcode is 516213. The board agenda is also available online at www.TUSD.org. Public comment can be submitted via email to the superintendent's office at superintendent@TUSD.org. Submissions will be read aloud at the public meeting. Submissions can be received 30 minutes prior to the start of closed session. The guidelines for public comment will be in accordance with board policy 2350. And Mrs. Reagans, I did not receive any emails today for public comment.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Concludes that.
Thank you, sir. I do want to read our mission statement, which is actually on our agenda each and every time. The Torrance Unified School District strives to ensure that each and every student is educated and prepared to succeed in life. We are dedicated to maximizing individual potential and developing lifelong learners who will be contributing members in a global society. So I do call this meeting to order. Welcome to all of you guests and folks who are joining us. It's kind of hard to see you, but we're physically distanced, which is as it should be. I do want to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I turned my computer so that you can see the flag behind me. So let's all stand. Place your hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I think it's important to remember what we're here for and who we're serving. I would like a motion and a second to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt the agenda for the regular meeting of August 17th of the Board of Education. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We will start our meeting this evening with a staff presentation. Oh, excuse me. No, we will start our meeting this evening with a report out of closed session. In fact, I have a number of things to read to you from our closed session. Sorry we were a little late coming back. Thank you for waiting for us. We appreciate your patience. The Board of Education took action to deny Ms. Hilton's application to file a late claim and directed that notice of denial be provided to Ms. Hilton by the district's chief business officer. The roll call vote in closed session was unanimous. There was a second action that I just need to report from a previous meeting because it has been affirmed. The Board of Education in closed session on February 18th, 2020, approved the release of claims and actions in Los Angeles County Superior Court case number BC 678789, contingent upon the court's approval of a minor's compromise. The roll call vote was unanimous. The court approved the minor's compromise on August 7th, 2020. And last but not least, and I see someone has joined us that is the recipient of this last one, in closed session, the Board of Education voted unanimously to approve a new administrative appointment that will be effective August 18th, 2020. And that individual has joined us, and that's Dr. Lisa Hall as a Director of Special Education. Yay! I have a bit of information to share about Lisa. Bear with me. She's done a lot of things, so I do want to share all of that with you. Lisa comes to us from the Menifee Union School District, where she served as Director of Special Ed since October 2018. She previously served as Interim Managing Director for Oxford Preparatory Academy from November 2017 through September 2018. Administrator Educational Programs for the same academy from April 2015 through October 2017. Youth and Family Services Consultant for the City of Pomona from July 2013 through March of 2015. Principal at Adelanto Elementary School, TK to 6, in the Adelanto Elementary School District from July 2012 through June 2013. Acting Director, Curriculum and Instruction in that position, I think. She was also Principal at Cal Aero Preserve Academy, K-8, and Principal at Los Serranos Elementary School, K-8, in the Chino Unified School District from September 2006 through June 2011. Principal at Freiberger Elementary School, Pre-K to 5, in the Westminster School District from 2004 through August 2006. Assistant Principal in Fulton Middle School, grades 6 to 8, in the Fountain Valley School District from July 2001 through June 2004, an elementary teacher, high school teacher, and student activities director in the El Rancho Unified School District from August 1994 through June 2001. Lisa received her Bachelor of Arts in English from Cal State University, San Bernardino in 1993, her Master of Education in Educational Management from the University of La Verne in 1999, her educational doctorate in Educational Administration and Leadership with an emphasis on educator professional development from the University of California, Irvine in 2007, and her Master of Science in Mild Moderate Special Education from Cal State University, San Bernardino in 2016. She is currently in a school business management certificate program, of course she is, at the USC, University of Southern California, with an anticipated completion date of June 2021. We would like to welcome Lisa to our district. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
And this is your
Thank
moment.
you, President Reagan. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, President Reagan's board members, Dr. Stowe and Cabinet. Thank you very much for approving my appointment this evening. As you are aware, the Torrance Unified School District has a long-standing reputation as an exemplary educational organization, and I am truly honored and delighted to join your leadership team. I look forward to collaborating with all district departments and school sites to serve Torrance Unified stakeholders in order to advance the district's mission, which I'm so grateful you read before the meeting began this evening, and shared commitments. And I do understand that the district special education coordinators, program specialists, service providers, and support staff are wonderfully talented. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to work with this gifted group to nurture areas of excellence and also address any areas that present opportunities for growth and learning and development. I hope to meet each of you personally in the very near future, and I really just cannot thank you enough for your approval this evening.
Okay, thanks. Welcome again. We appreciate having you. All right. So you're welcome to stay and see all of the wonderful things that we're going to be doing in our meeting. We're happy to have you, but we do understand if you have a few more moments of freedom that you want to explore the world, but we will move on. And now we will move on to our staff presentation and information. We need to, actually, I will read the item first. Approve a revised Torrance Unified School District Wellness Policy and Resource Guide. And I know who's going to lead us in that, but I'm going to have Dr. Butler introduce her.
Thank you very much. Yes, Kathleen Cole is our Director of Nutrition Services. She and her group have done a lot of work in this past year to get the wellness policy updated, teed up, and ready to go for you. And I think she can talk about it certainly better than I can. So Ms. Cole, if you would please.
Thank you, Dr.
Welcome,
Butler.
Kathleen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Stowe, cabinet. As Dr. Butler mentioned, my name is Kathleen Cole, and I'm the Director of Nutrition Services. And tonight I'll be going over some highlights of our Nutrition Services Department, as well as just some updates from our and revisions of our Wellness Policy and Resource Guide. So first, I want to start off with some good news. We did receive 5 grants for $3,000 from the Gen Youth Organization for each of the schools that were serving meals during the pandemic when it first started back in March. So this comes out to a total of $15,000, and we'll be spending these funds on resources for our meal distribution, so food, equipment, and packaging. Mr. Hahn might also remember mentioning this to me back when he was volunteering his time at Hull. So I just want to mention that there. Moving on to the revisions of the Wellness Policy and Resource Guide. As a committee, we have a total of 18 members, and we even have a board member. We're very fortunate, Mrs. Reagans being one of them. And our goal as a committee is to promote an environment that is conducive to learning and that protects our children's health and their well-being. One significant area of change we implemented this last year was making sure each site had what's called a classroom celebrations binder. So the CDE requires us to document any time foods or beverages are sold and served on campus, and they must meet the SMART snack regulations, meaning low in fat, low in sugar, low in calories. So we met with all the necessary stakeholders involved to make sure these practices were in place, and we've updated the policy to reflect these changes, and that is what is in front of you tonight. Next, I do want to touch on just some updates of our department and kind of where we're headed. We're really focusing in on sustainability and reducing our carbon footprints and food waste and paper waste. So something that we've done in the last year is we have removed the styrofoam 5-compartment trays from our district, so from all school sites, and we've switched to biodegradable trays. And it is an additional cost, but we believe this the benefits outweigh the cost, especially since it'll have a long-term effect on our environment. And then lastly, I do just want to touch on our meal distribution process for the upcoming school year. We are going to continue to serve meals on Mondays and Thursdays at the start of the year. We will be serving from all school sites. So all TUSD school sites except for Sherry. And we'll be serving meals from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. On Mondays, we'll be giving out 3 days worth of meals. And on Thursdays, we'll be giving out 2 days worth of meals. And meals will include breakfast and lunch. Meals will no longer be free, unfortunately, because we can no longer operate under the Seamless Summer program. However, it will be charged based off of eligibility, so free, paid, and reduced. We will serve a K through 12 menu, so there will be an adjustment in the cost. Breakfast will be $2 and lunch will be $4. Therefore, bulk meals on Monday will cost $18, and on Thursdays it will cost $12. So this adjustment in the cost of meals will hopefully allow our department to break even, and it will add some simplicity to our staff and then families as they're coming through. So that concludes my updates. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, and I really appreciate the time. So thank you, everyone.
Any questions, comments from anyone? Mr. Hahn.
So first of all, I want to just say thanks to all the staff for the summer. I know this is the last week, but Kathleen, you and your staff did an amazing job. I was able to stop by this past Thursday. It's just good to see everything's been going on. But I do have one question. So people have been asking, like, so for kids that are at different schools, like let's say you have a high school kid and a middle school kid, will we be able to have where it will be only one pickup for that family rather than parent got to go 3 schools to pick up 3 different meals?
Yes, definitely. So we are going to allow parents for one to pick up, and if you are a parent that has multiple kids in the district at different sites, they can just pick up from one site. More information on this will be coming out through TammyCon probably tomorrow or the next day too, just so we know there's a lot of questions in this process, so keep an eye out for that too.
Did you mention something about the free and reduced lunch process? That if you applied last year, does that continue this year? You have to reapply. How does that work?
So you have to reapply every year. If you were on the meal application last year, it will continue and will expire until October 8th. So if you have never applied, we encourage you to apply before the start of the school year. So if you are eligible for free and reduced meals, you can receive those benefits.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else? It's so nice to see you at the meeting, Kathleen. We should have you here more often.
I know
You
it's
always
weird.
bring good news.
It's weird to be on this side. I'm used to being at home watching all of you. So it's
Oh,
different.
that's true. Hey, one more question. Do you have a
Yes.
sense of how many meals altogether we served this summer?
Oh, total. So we're doing about 22,000 meals a week. So I would say probably in the $300,000 or 300,000 range. So it's been,
Wow,
yeah.
awesome. That's really nice to hear. Okay, well, thank you. I look forward to working with you again on the Wellness Committee. And actually, let's put in a sort of a bid for anybody who's interested in joining the committee, perhaps. Do you want to say something about that?
Yes, please. So I will be posting the Wellness Policy and Resource Guide once it's approved, hopefully tonight, as well as the Zoom links for future Wellness Committee meetings if anyone out there is interested in participating. So probably tomorrow or the next day is when I will get that uploaded onto our TUSD website under the Nutrition Services webpage.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, so did I get a motion, folks? I didn't. Are you sure? It says approve. It says approved revised wellness policy and resource guide. Do you need an approval there, Kathleen? Or if we just say, great job, is that good enough?
That works for me if it works for you. So sure.
Well, it is a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on, we do have, our next item is a public hearing. This is a duly noticed public hearing for public input pertaining to the composition of district-based boundaries for school board members. This is the second of the two initial hearings prior to the drafting of potential trustee area election boundaries. After the drafting of potential trustee area election boundaries, additional public hearings will be held at times and locations to be determined. Dr. Douglas Johnson, oh, and I see him, he's joined us. The president of the National Demographics Corporation has been retained to assist the district with implementing the conversion from at-large to by trustee district area for school board members. Dr. Johnson will provide the public with information pertaining to the process for the conversion from at-large to by trustee district area elections. Dr. Johnson will also advise the public as to when the election cycle will follow this new process for our school board elections. All right, Dr. Johnson, you're on.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen here so we can hopefully get this going. Screen. There we go. Okay. So I'll jump in. This will look somewhat familiar since, as you just mentioned, this is the second presentation. It's information provision and education and then gathering information, but we don't have any draft maps yet. So that by law won't come until the next hearing on this topic. But I will go through this. Most of the board members have heard this, so I'll go through it fairly quickly, but I do want to touch on everything for new members of the public that may be hearing this for the first time. And then we'll, of course, be happy to go back in more detail on anything that board members or the public would like to hear more about. So first of all, just at the very big picture, we are talking about how the board is elected. It is important to emphasize that while we often talk a lot about attendance zones through this process, nothing in this process will affect any school that anyone attends. So this is only for the board election decisions. It won't have any impact on what school kids attend. And as you probably realize, historically and this year, the board is elected at large, meaning each year either 2 board seats or 3 board seats are up for election, and everyone in the district votes for all of their top 2 or all of their top 3 choices. That's called at large. That's historically been the most common system, but the California Voting Rights Act that I'll talk about more in a moment was written specifically to encourage a move away from that. So there are a very few number of jurisdictions that are what's called from district or resident district, where the candidates have to live in a trustee area, but the election is still district-wide or citywide. That under the law is just considered another at-large system. So there were only a few of those to begin with, and we're seeing those disappear because they're not a protection from a lawsuit. The only safe harbor from a lawsuit is to be by district, or in the case of a school district, by trustee area, which is what we're talking about moving to now for Torrance Unified. California Voting Rights Act, just in a nutshell, it builds on the Federal Voting Rights Act, which has been around a long time and we know a lot about because there have been hundreds of lawsuits and judicial rulings. But there's been very little of that detail building for California law. Essentially, its goal was to make it easier for plaintiffs to force jurisdictions to move from at-large to by-district elections by really downplaying and all but eliminating 2 of the 4 tests that you have to fail under the federal law. So now, for a plaintiff to win, all they really have to show is a few factors and then polarized voting. And that's just a statistical analysis. And that battle over statistics and between experts is why these cases get to be absurdly expensive, as I'll give you some numbers on in just a moment. But the key thing to keep in mind is that the California law makes it much easier for someone who wants to force any jurisdiction into by area or by district elections to win that lawsuit. We've only had 3 real trials on the merits. So as you can see in the top left, Palmdale, Santa Clara, and Santa Monica all went to trial on the merits of whether or not the jurisdiction was violating the law. And all 3 lost at trial. Santa Clara and Santa Monica are still in the appeals process. And actually a few weeks ago, Santa Monica won their appeal at the State Board of Appeals, or Court of Appeals. That case is now almost certainly headed up to the state Supreme Court. So we don't have a final decision in that, but it is the first setback for the plaintiffs in this, under this law. And these cases have been very expensive. Modesto and Palmdale each spent almost $2 million on their defense and then had to pay millions of dollars to the plaintiff side as well. Santa Monica doesn't say how much they've spent, but they're estimated to have spent at least $8 million so far in their defense to this point. And after the trial, the plaintiffs asked for $22 million in lawyers' fees. So that is now set aside with this appeals court ruling, thankfully for the students in the district. But we'll see what happens as that case goes on. But you see in the right-hand side, the frequency of the 6- and 7-figure settlements in these cases. Because of all those financial impacts and the financial risk involved, we're seeing what we call a quiet tsunami sweeping the state. We're now at least 240 school districts that have been forced to move from at-large to by-district or by-trustee area elections. 144 cities, with more, it seems like almost every day, making the switch. And just to put this in perspective, before the California law, there were only 29 cities that were by-district in California out of the 492. So to that 29, we've now added 144 more. So that gives you a sense of the scale of the change taking place. And then now we're seeing more and more activity in the special district realm of airport districts and water districts and fire protection districts making the change because of legal threats as well. So that's a little background on the law, kind of what brought the district to this point. As I just mentioned, this is the second hearing. We had the first hearing last month. After this meeting, things get a little more concrete as NDC and anyone from the public who wants to submit a map will be drawing draft maps. Those will be posted by the end of this month. And then there will be 2 hearings on those draft maps. September 8th will be the first and September 21st will be the second one. And the board will select their preferred map and election sequence. It's expected at the September 21st meeting. Then there's a county committee hearing and a vote from the county committee to approve this. It's worth noting that obviously given how late we are in the year, this change is not happening for this year's election. So the 2020 election will be a traditional Torrance Unified election held district-wide with, I believe there's 2 seats up this year. So those seats, the top 2 vote getters will win those seats. What we're talking about doing is the trustee areas being drawn for the next election in 2022. And whoever wins this year's election would then run by area in 2024. So just to be clear, there's no change for this year's election. It'll be a traditional election just because we're way past the deadline to make the change for this year. In terms of how the draft maps will be drawn, on the left-hand side, you see the federal laws. These are the requirements. We have to have an essentially equal number of people. And it's not registered voters, it's total people in each trustee area. We have to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act, which means we cannot dilute any protected class population, meaning Latinos, Asian Americans, African Americans, or Native Americans. We can't draw lines in a way that dilutes their voting strength. But at the same time, we cannot racially gerrymander. So we want to look for neighborhoods where protected classes are concentrated and keep those together. But we don't want to draw lines predominantly based on race. What we want to base the maps on predominantly is the traditional principles on the right. And these are goals, not requirements. So we want to look at communities of interest, and I'll talk about those a bit more in just a moment. To the degree possible, we want the trustee areas to be compact and contiguous and to follow easily recognizable borders. And then we also want to respect voters' choices and, to the degree possible, not pair board members. And the main goal for that is so that the voters get to decide which board members have earned re-election in the 2022 and 2024 elections, rather than the lines telling the voters, you may want to re-elect these two, but you can't because of where the demographer drew the lines. And we're not really looking at this now, this last factor, but when we get the census data and review the maps next year, then we can look at planned and projected future growth and possibly slightly underpopulate by a percentage or two trustee areas that you think will grow faster than the others. But that's something we really need the new census data before we can do. So again, those are goals on the right-hand side. They're not requirements. What we'll ultimately want to decide on is which of the maps before you best balances all those goals and creates the best map for the district. In terms of demographics and numbers, don't worry, I'm not going to go through all these numbers. The key number is the top left, the total population at 145,000. That's the number that we'll divide and try to have an equal number in each trustee area. Then a little bit below that, you see in the top left, the citizen voting age population. Those are the numbers of eligible voters, and that's not the numbers, but the percentages are what we focus on for the Voting Rights Act. So if it's possible to draw a majority Latino seat or a majority Asian American seat, then we want to look at that and consider whether we need to do that to ensure compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act. All the other criteria, like the percentage of renters and language spoken at home and factors like that, are things that residents and board members may be interested in. So we present all this data for every trustee area and every draft map, but they're more for what a person's interests and goals may be. Like, can we have a majority renter district or trustee area? Or how many Spanish speakers are there in each trustee area? So we'll present all that data, but it's not as directly tied into legal requirements. I mentioned the Voting Rights Act and looking at concentrations that we want to be sure not to divide in a way that dilute their voting strength. And for Latinos, we're looking, there isn't any huge area where you see a lot of red and yellow or green that indicates majority Latino. But we do see a higher concentration of Latinos, primarily around Artesia Boulevard, west of 405, up in the north part of the district. And then along the edge of the more industrial areas on the east side of the district. So for each of those areas, we want to be sure not to divide those areas in a way that dilutes that population's voting strength. No surprise, given the demographics of the jurisdiction, there's more concentrations of Asian Americans. So same thing, this is a protected class, especially in the northeast, above 405, and then around Magruder School. We don't want to divide those areas. And then we have another concentration in the middle where you see the reds and yellows and greens that indicate majority Asian American areas. That's actually around Charles Wilson Community Park. So again, we want to be sure not to divide those areas in a way that dilutes that population's voting strength as we go through the maps. And as you get draft maps, NDC and legal counsel will flag anything that we think is a concern that might raise a problem with those issues. And obviously, our draft maps will be sure not to do that. I should note that I did look at African Americans and Native Americans, and in the district, there aren't any geographic concentrations of either of those groups where they stand out as more than in other parts of the city. So those are the Voting Rights Act concerns. Then we get into more traditional communities of interest, which could be anything. The most common one for a school district is your attendance areas. And again, we're not changing your attendance areas. We may simply use them as a reference point as we go through this process. But communities of interest could be defined by freeways, major roads, areas around parks, really whatever residents think of as their neighborhood. But we also want to follow up with the second question. First is, what is your community of interest? Second is, do you want that community of interest kept together to concentrate its vote in one trustee area, or to be divided, which would reduce its voting strength and odds of getting any one board member elected, but would give it a say in multiple board elections. Keep in mind, it still takes a majority of the board to accomplish anything. So it's not like county supervisors where the county supervisor kind of is the king or queen of their district. This is just a representative, and it still takes 3 votes to get to do anything. So often we do look at, and often neighborhoods do say we should be having more than one representative who's accountable to us. There's no right or wrong answer to that question. It's just a second question for anyone commenting to keep in mind. As examples of maps, first, I've got 2 very traditional maps. These are highly compact trustee areas. This is where really each neighborhood is kept united in a single trustee area. So Glendora Unified, you can see 5 very distinct geographic sections of the school district. Same thing with Glendale Unified. You've got the north, east, west, central, and southwest trustee areas. That's often what we think of, and that's kind of the keep a neighborhood together approach. The other approach, equally valid, you can see in Redwood City on the left, where the trustee areas look a little odd, because especially the pink and the blue, where they kind of stretch out. And then Central Unified up by Fresno on the right, where the part in the top right where you see all the dense streets, that's Fresno. And each of the trustee areas starts there and kind of stretches out. Both of these jurisdictions, we're saying we don't want a trustee to be focused on one school. We want our trustee areas to stretch out so that each board member represents multiple schools, and so that each school has multiple representatives on the board. The idea that they raised was to avoid balkanization and kind of my school versus your school. So it might end up in a slightly funny looking map, but it's for a very clear policy driven reason. And again, whether you're compact or ensuring multiple representatives for each school, both of these are equally valid answers. Neither one has more legal weight or is considered better. They're just 2 different choices you can choose among. Just for reference, this is the city council district map. Again, as we talked about last time, there are 6 city council districts. So we can't just follow these. Their population target is 1/6 of the city versus 1/5 of the school district. Also, the boundaries don't quite match up. There are slight differences in the school district border versus the city. But these may be something you want to reference to and consider as we're looking at draft maps or drawing draft maps and trying to follow them as much as possible, something like that, if that's a choice you want to follow, because obviously it's something that residents are now hopefully becoming familiar with as the city goes through its first election by district right now. Again, I mentioned that a lot of jurisdictions want to look at where their attendance zones. The map on the right is your high school attendance zones. On the left, it lists which elementary and middle schools feed into that. And again, this is the question of we can concentrate to the degree possible trustee areas and individual attendance zones. Obviously, there are 4 high school zones and 5 board seats, so it won't be a perfect match. Or we can intentionally draw lines to ensure that at least each high school attendance zone and possibly each middle school even attendance zone is represented by multiple board members, giving those parents multiple board members who are accountable to them, who they can go to if they have an issue. So hopefully that's something to think about. Happy to take any comments or directions from the public or questions from the public or the board that you have this evening. And as I mentioned, we'll be back next month with maps posted by September 1st and then discussed at your next board meeting in September with actual draft maps to choose from. That's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you for your remarks, Dr. Johnson, and your great graphics, actually. At this time, are there any questions for Dr. Johnson from any of the board members? And I can't see y'all, so if you have something you want to say, holler.
Thank you so much again, Dr. Johnson. As you mentioned, the recent case in Santa Monica, they were not able to draw a district with more than 30% minority representation, specifically the Latino population. Torrance, as you indicated, has 16% Latinos. Do you think that you'll be able to, do you think that Torrance and Santa Monica are in a similar situation where possibly we cannot give, allow there to be a Latino seat, perhaps in that Northwest Artesia area?
I haven't looked at the numbers in detail yet. That is something that you will see in the draft maps. We will certainly look at that. As you mentioned, the Santa Monica case was focused on Latinos. The concern I might have in Torrance that wasn't present in Santa Monica is the ability to draw an Asian-American majority seat. So we don't, the Santa Monica case won't clearly answer the question of Torrance's liability or lack thereof. But we'll certainly look at that in the draft maps. And when we come back to you with those draft maps, you'll be able to see right away whether we were able to draw a majority seat or whether it's only a 30% or somewhere in between.
Did you say your concern is not being able to do a Asian American seat? Is that what you just said?
No, I was saying, I think, my gut instinct, as you say, the Latino numbers are pretty low and we probably won't be able to draw a Latino majority seat, but I'll know that for sure with the draft maps. But at the same time, it's very likely that we will be able to draw an Asian American majority seat. So the question that Santa Monica would leave out there is, okay, if you can't draw a Latino majority seat, that's Santa Monica's situation. But what if you can draw an Asian American seat? That isn't clearly answered.
I see. I look forward to the map drafts later on. Thank you so much for doing this for us.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
She said thanks.
Oh,
Thanks, Mrs. Liu.
Thanks. Yeah.
oh, my pleasure.
Anybody else? Questions, comments? No. I have a question. What potential is there for the public to be involved in creating these maps? And if there is potential, how can they do that?
We certainly welcome maps from the public. As some folks may realize, in the city process, we actually had an online mapping tool that allowed residents to draw maps and get the numbers just right. The catch is that tool, because of mainly of software licensing fees, is very expensive. It costs almost $15,000 to put that out. So we're not, that's not part of this project, unfortunately. But if residents do want to draw maps, if they have access to their own numbers or they just want to estimate them, they can certainly send those in. And if they send them in with a couple of days for us to process them, we will process them, run the population numbers for them, and then present them along with our draft maps. So we certainly welcome submissions. Unfortunately, just purely because of costs in this era, we won't have a official mapping tool. But residents we do welcome maps submitted anyways.
Okay, that's interesting. So you would figure out the numbers if I were to draw borders and the way it looks good to me or something to that effect, you would be able to tell me.
Yes, we would then run the numbers, import the map and generate the data for you. The challenge is, of course, without having the numbers before you, it's really hard to get population balanced trustee areas. but we're certainly happy to draw that and give at least a sense of where those lines are.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Lee, Mr. Gerson, Mr. Han?
Actually,
No.
may I say something?
Sure, Mrs. Liu, sure.
Yeah. Thanks again, Dr. Johnson. I just want you to know that my position, and I'm just an individual here, is that I'm concerned that the scenario you mentioned, each board member having their own territory and high school, but then you offer the multiple representation one, and I would prefer that to happen a lot more than just the concentration districts that you mentioned.
Okay, thank you
Thank
for that
you.
comment. All right, Dr. Johnson, I think that's it for the evening. Thank you so much. After this discussion, we have many more opportunities coming up. This is not the last, so you don't need to speak now or forever hold your peace. There will be other times.
Definitely.
And I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
So our next item is oral communications, schedule of hearings, non-agenda items, which we have none of. Is that correct, Dr. Stowe?
I have none.
Okay. Do any board members have any items that they wanted to read or share at this point? Okay. So we will move on into the agenda items. We do have some discussion action items. Instructions for those, but again, I don't think I need to read those since we don't have any comments related to agenda items either. Okay. The first is item 11.2. The first discussion action item is 11.2. Call for nominations for California School Boards Association, we call it CSBA, Directors at Large for Asian Pacific Islander and Hispanic. That means, do we have any board members who are interested in being a representative of Asian Pacific Islander group or Hispanic group? Anybody want to speak up, or anybody want to nominate anyone, or take any action on this? We don't have to, but if there's someone that's interested, this is the time to have your say.
No one looks like they're volunteering.
No?
Of course, it's a funny group. They called me up after I ignored 5 of their emails. Kind of
Mr. Lee, yes,
Yeah.
yes, I could see that.
And to explain that I didn't qualify.
Okay. So the call will go unanswered right now? Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
And we'll leave it for now, but if anyone is interested, please do check the nomination process. And if you are interested, we would be willing to support you. Okay, our second discussion action item is approval of the resolution of the Board of Education of the Torrance Unified School District approving ongoing actions to respond effectively to the impact of COVID-19 on district schools through the 2020-2021 school year. That is a mouthful. I think I will defer to Dr. Stowe to discuss that.
Thank you. On this, you do need a motion and a second, however.
Okay. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Sorry.
And second? Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Reagans and board members. This resolution proposes to amend the resolution that the board took action on March 25th, 2020 to close all of our schools. With school starting and all of the work that's been done behind the scenes and in front of the scenes by all of our staff, and I know you're well aware of the amount of work that's gone into not just preparing our schools for the hopeful return of students, but also staff. And so a number of things have been done in and around our sites and classrooms. And so when the board took action on March 25th to close all of our schools, that basically shut down the ability for a number of things to happen. And so this resolution specifically calls out a couple of items. One is for under 3A, implementing various learning options, including virtual, online, and distance learning, where teachers may teach from their on-site classrooms. We've had a number of requests of teachers, and although we're not asking that, requiring them to be in their classrooms, we know that a number of teachers, for many reasons, want to be in their classroom while they deliver virtual instruction. This resolution would allow that. The second item is mandatory educational programs, including special education programs. We have heard from the county and the state, and we have had conversation in these meetings before, that there are certain things that some of our special education students, we are not able to provide certain services online. And so while we do not have specifics from the county or the state on this item, we do believe that it is imminent that we will be bringing students to campus in very safe manner, in which we can provide assessments and or some services for special education students. Thirdly, and we have worked tremendously close with the YMCA and the city, but the YMCA particularly, they are going to provide childcare on our sites. And so Dr. Kim and Dr. Butler have been in conversation with them. YMCA has actually opened up their registration. And so this resolution would allow childcare to be provided in compliance with state and federal law and county health guidelines on our campuses. And then finally, other activities as warranted by the current emergency conditions of COVID-19. And so those will be addressed by me individually as they arise. And again, making sure that we are fully in compliance of any and all county and state guidelines when it comes to the health and safety of our students and our employees in the community. So that is all I have in presenting this item. If the board has any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
May I go first? Well, I have a few things to say, but there's one question in particular. Let me pull up the... So number 3, directs that school and facilities of the Torrance Unified School District shall continue to remain closed to students, staff, and the community, except on a limited basis as directed by the superintendent in compliance with the foregoing authorization, including compliance with applicable state and local health and safety protocols as necessary for educational related activities, including, but not limited to. That little statement right there, but not limited to, basically makes this an open action. I trust our superintendent, but approving it as written means that the superintendent could officially do anything, including reopening schools without any further approval from this body. Mrs. Liu's the attorney, so she may tell me I'm wrong, but I think that's the interpretation. And I didn't realize that until we were going through it. So is that the case? Because I agree with all of the points that are listed for action, but I am concerned that this is not, that the language is very open-ended.
Well, and yes, that is accurate on decisions such as bringing students back or opening the campuses for large-scale use. That is certainly something that I would bring back to the board. What we heard from the reason for the flexibility is really around special education. So we heard on Friday from the governor, without any advance notice to school districts or anything written, that said that schools can begin to bring special education students on campus. And the flexibility in there, and also part of that was, and you'll hear likely from your county health department in the next week or so. The purpose that I see it in that flexibility would be to allow me, if if the governor, made some order like what just happened, and the county health department allows it, and they've got written guidelines, that we would not need to wait for a board meeting to be in compliance with some of these things, and specifically around special education. As you know, there are very strict timelines, and legal requirements, and so that would be the reason for me to enact, I guess, that authorization. So, we could certainly remove that, and the board can make any amendments to this resolution at this point in time before voting on it. But that is, and that's kind of the way I read this, and in speaking with our attorney regarding that, is to make sure that we wouldn't need to call another board meeting to comply with something that the state is saying that we can and need to do.
Okay, thank you for those comments.
May I ask something?
Mrs. Liu?
Yeah,
Yes.
even if we were to take out the phrase, but not limited to, doesn't paragraph 3D, as in David, do the same thing? That it says other activities as warranted by current COVID-19 emergency conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So that would mean not necessarily just what the governor says, but whatever other activity that we might warrant as an emergency condition.
Yes, that is also, that's part of that language that it is somewhat open-ended.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I did have a question about the, you have special education programs. I know that we've had discussions, and I've heard from the Department of Public Health various things as to whether special ed assessments and evaluations would be allowed on our campuses. That's not specifically called out, but that could be, I guess, construed as a special ed program if it's an evaluation program.
Sure, that is the way we would read that as well, that it's a mandatory thing that we are on a timeline to administer those assessments and then report the results. And so in order to, and these are in very particular cases where students, where our staff cannot assess the students virtually, whether it's occupational therapy related or other kinds of assessments that need to be done that can't be done virtually.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to make a comment that I think you have established a collaborative approach to things. So actually, I feel fairly assured that if there were a major alteration or something that you felt needed to be implemented, you would bring it to the board and discuss it with us.
Absolutely.
Comment. Just a comment.
Yes, Mr. Hahn.
So I agree with that. What you're saying, Dr. Reagan, President Reagan's, that Dr. Stowe has definitely demonstrated a collaborative discussion with all of us as board members. And I think because everything is so fluid with county public health and the state of education and the state of California, we have to allow Dr. Stowe that same kind of fluidity as well, to kind of like make decisions when everything is so fluid, rather than waiting for the next board meeting a month later to make those important decisions.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to tie his hands if something came up and we needed to get something done.
That's true. We want him to be able to pivot in an emergency situation, but at the same time, not write a blank check to go, schools can open without any conversation. Because I don't know, the way I'm reading it is limited capacity, blah, 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 but not limited to, which means anything can happen. I don't know how we give him the authority to pivot without a blank check.
Good question. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee.
some extent, superintendents have blank checks. Because that's kind of how the thing's written. Also, superintendents like to have happy boards as opposed to unhappy boards, because 3 of us could decide that we're unhappy and then he becomes very unhappy because he's unemployed. And so I don't know, I don't see him doing anything unilaterally against what he would perceive as the board's wishes. He's pretty good at those 7:15 or 7:30 in the morning phone calls, certainly to the president of the board. And so consequently, I don't have a whole lot of uneasiness about this at all. So I'll be joining Mrs. Reagans and Mr. Hahn on this. Thank you.
Okay.
May I add that he's also good with 12:30 in the morning? I think he only sleeps 4 hours, I guess. 12:30
true.
in the morning, so.
He and I are night owls together sometimes. I did want to point out that actually item 5 in this resolution does deal with having the board continue having the possibility to conduct its meetings via teleconferencing or virtual board meeting. We actually haven't had that discussion as to what we're going to do with that. The executive order N3520, does that have a final time when it runs out, Dr. Stowe? I don't recall that, but that might be
I do not
worthwhile
know.
to know. Yeah. It does afford us that flexibility that we need to be able to actually have meetings. And thankfully we can still do it, is have our meetings. So I appreciate that. Anything else from anybody?
Yeah, so when we do reach the point of reopening, which is still completely feasible later on in the year, we talk a lot about pivoting, which is incredibly important when we get directives from the state, the county, or once we do open, the need to quickly close to prevent a widespread outbreak or spike. But on the opening plan, I trust that it would be a transition. So, as I was envisioning it in my mind, that, whether it's the district asking the board or the board asking the district to put a change on the agenda, that gives people notice. And then once we vote on it, that's giving people additional notice. At the time that the district would be writing the new resolution, I would hope that there would also be press release information being created at the same time. So at the close of the board meeting, that release would be sent to parents and to teachers and to staff, giving them the time to transition. I know we have a lot of families who spending time at their cabins. Those of us who are in education don't get that, but they can conduct school from various places because they are doing it virtually, and giving them time to close up, come home, or if they have childcare, ending the week, and allowing also our teachers and staff to adjust plans, especially our teachers moving from what they would think be a virtual lesson and then having to change it to a blended lesson, that there's a lot of time that would need. And so, when I was reading that statement, I'm going, well, I want to make sure that that time still remains there so that families and teachers and staff can all transition back to create that best opening.
Absolutely. We have not yet put together kind of a timeline of what our reopening would look like, but that is definitely something that we will be doing here after Labor Day. Really to be able to, like you say, make sure we communicate with our staff, with our, parents, to make sure that we've got everything at the sites ready to go so that when students do come back, it's safe for everybody. And so communication is a huge piece of that, but also the anticipation of and being able to look at the data and then kind of know once you're off the state list for 14 days, what happens then? And that's, I think, the critical time that we need to map out and that we will communicate, because once you're off that state list, it's not come back tomorrow. we know that there's a transition time. There's, you know, teachers getting classrooms ready, or, you know, other staff making sure that, that we're ready to receive students. And so we will be working through that and having a timeline in place that takes into account all of the same, you know, breakdown of committees that we did through the task force. And because we're going to have to address facilities, health and safety, and instruction, and all those pieces.
Since you brought up that, I would like to talk about that a little bit more. So at the last board meeting, you know, I kind of discussed, I kind of felt like I was the one who was kind of on the slower, rather than, you know, as soon as the green lights are given, and I wanted to elaborate a little bit more. We've spent so much time, you know, I've seen Mrs. Liu, I've seen Mrs. Reagan's on most of the same meetings that I've been in. I know Ms. Reagan's also has her additional president's group that has meetings, and Mrs. Liu has access to other meetings, and I've seen Mr. Han pop in at some of the ones I've been at as well. We've spent 5 months looking and educating ourselves at the state level and the county level. I spent a lot of time last week looking more at the local level. And I want to thank Craig Leach, the CEO at Torrance Memorial, and Gary Olney, the CEO at Providence Little Company, because Dr. Crumpy and I, you know, we were discussing words, you know, when is it safe to open? And that's a bad term, because as Mr. Hahn said at the last meeting, when we do open, there will be increased infection. It's inevitable. And safer isn't a good word, because anything is safer. So really the question is, when is it safe enough to open? And so we know that we, you know, just on liability's sake, we have to wait for the state and county green lights. We can't act before they give us approval. But using the same numbers that the county uses, which is set by the state, what does that look like in Torrance? And so, you know, the three main things that the state have been looking at is elevated disease transmission, increasing hospitalization, and limited hospital capacity. So on the elevated disease transmission, they want the daily infection rates to be less than 100 new cases per day per 100,000 population. And as of Friday's meeting for elected officials that County Public Health did, we got to hear that our county is still over 300 per 100,000. And they want to get it down to 200 per 100,000. At that point, the elementary school waiver can be a conversation. But ultimately, they want to get it down below 100 per 100,000. And that's where, you know, that's where we start to look at the green light for the county. But what does that mean for the South Bay? So in Torrance, the less than 100 new cases per day per 100,000 for us would be less than 149 cases. Our current 14-day average is 11. Which is significantly less than the 149, which is great. And the South Bay is doing, you know, exceptionally well, especially Torrance. Today's number, which came in after I averaged all the data, was we were up 2 more today. That came in while we were in closed session. Hospitalization rates should not be increasing by 10% or more. And we have the ability to measure Torrance's numbers thanks to the help of Torrance Memorial and Little Company. And our numbers have been going down over the last week, and ours were significantly low anyway. The third one is limited hospital capacity. So the state is looking at ICU capacity greater than 20%. And so combined between Torrance Memorial Medical Center and Providence Little Company, they have a regular 76 ICU beds. And so for Torrance, we would need to have greater than 15 ICU beds available to know that, that our hospitals could handle any severe cases. And they've gotten really good at treating COVID-19 without having to send people to the ICU. But the Torrance Memorial alone had 39 ICU beds last week when we were talking. And Providence also had over 15 by itself. So plenty of capacity in Torrance. But the question is when the green light comes, will all three of those conditions still be true for us? Little company, Providence Little Company, of course, was more worried about PPE. I don't know if, I haven't heard of us getting what the state promised. So still waiting to hear what the state is going to have sent to us through LACO. But talking to pediatricians, which I had discussed at a previous meeting, talking about how they felt comfortable with face coverings and face shields, as well as the child having face coverings, that they felt comfortable being in the room with the patient. But, you know, they had a time limit of 10 minutes. In an hour class, you know, you can't teach in 10 minutes. But in addition to everyone being required face coverings, I'm hoping that we can offer teachers the choice of face shield or goggles, whatever they feel comfortable with, so that we take ourselves up to that higher level of protection. Testing has been an issue. So the state wanted us to do a passive testing protocol, which was 25% of our staff tested every 2 weeks. So every employee would be tested every 2 months. That's a lot of tests. I had 2 employees confide that they had requested tests, and both of them had to wait 5+ days for results. We cannot pivot and deal with that while that testing issue arises. Craig Leach at Torrance Memorial, however, has offered a solution to our problem, which I'm grateful and appreciative for. So Torrance Memorial has purchased a module from Abbott Laboratories that will allow them to do 12,000 tests per month with results in 24 hours. And they have offered to work with us and be a partner and help us have staff tested and get that 24-hour results. And I'm gonna, hopefully Dr. Stowe will take advantage of that. That will be available in early October. The only other confusion that still remains is the contract tracing portion that the county public health is going to push on us, that the district still has to figure out what that's going to look like. But that's more of what I was thinking when I say that we need to be also deliberate and conscientious, that we do have access to these local numbers. Our partners at, you know, Torrance Memorial and Little Company are great partners and willing to help us with this data, and making sure that when the time comes and the state says yes and the county says yes, that we can still look at these numbers and go, Torrance is still in awesome shape, just like we are right now, and that we can open. So I just wanted to be a little more clear about where my head was last week. So I did that research, and so I present that to you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for the information. That's all good stuff. Let's see, anything else on this, folks? Before we vote? Everybody ready to vote? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution of the Board of Education of the Torrance Unified School District approving ongoing actions to respond effectively to the impact of COVID-19 on district schools through the 2020-2021 school year. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And now we are to Mr. Lee's favorite part of the agenda, the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve consent items 13 through 19 inclusive.
I'll
I
second.
second.
I can also throw in the motion to adjourn in that same item.
No, we have a few reports. You're going too far now. So I have a motion and a second to approve all consent items from item 13 through 19.19. Nope, yep, 19.19. Does anybody want to consider anything individually? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All of the consent items are approved. And that takes us to our board calendar. There is a board calendar on our agenda. There are dates on some of the items. There is a lot of uncertainty represented, though, in many of the items. So you can check out what is there. And all of that is in flux and, again, needs to be flexible and able to pivot. So we will keep that in mind as we move forward into the school year. And our next item is a comment from a member of the Board of Education who is our SoCal Rock representative. We haven't heard about them for a while, Mr. Hahn. What's going on over there?
So I wish I had good news.
Uh-oh.
So SoCal Rock will be laying off about 7 classified employees. And so they'll be cutting off staff. That was a very difficult decision that we had to make. It doesn't affect certified because teachers get paid if there's a class. So it's not like you're laying off. It's just that you're not having a class. And so it was difficult. They had to make cuts for the upcoming year. And so, can you hear me now? So one of the other benefits, one good news though is, so their essential workers have certain classes like dental and whatever. So those classes can continue on in the midst of this pandemic. So that's one of the things that we're going to try to focus on, is trying to focus on classes for essential workers, where we might be able to bring more students on, taking those classes to support those industries. And so that's going to be part of the marketing strategy, where we're going to try to recruit more students to come onto campus by offering these type of classes. So I know Dr. Halar is looking into what are the best ways that we can do that. And so obviously it's a difficult time. They have to make some tough decisions, but I think we made good decisions. But I think that there's hope because of these classes that we're able to offer in the midst of this pandemic. And so that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Wow, so they're able to get enough funding like that to keep going?
For some of those classes, yeah. I think some of the close classes. That's why. So cutting the classified, there is still enough for now. And so again, not only that, but they also had the whole rental issue with Ambassador. So that's continuing on. So Ambassador is going to try to figure out how they're going to be able to work with that situation as well. And so that's been a huge blessing as they're trying to plan. Obviously, they have to go remote, obviously virtual as well, but they'll start working things out as well. And so they made preparations for the students to come on for Ambassador High School. And so they made all the protocols, what do they need to do so that they can come on when it's open up to that point.
Anybody have any questions or comments about SoCal Rock? Okay. Any other comments from board members before we finish off this evening?
We can't hear you, Terry.
If you have anything you want to say, board members, please, now is the time. I just said that all of that's interesting about SoCal Rock. I hope they can keep going. But that remains to be seen, I guess. We'll keep our fingers crossed for them. Any other comments from other board members? Anybody, if you want to speak, I can't see you, so holler. Mr. Hahn, go ahead, you're here.
So just a couple things. So Dr. Hall, welcome. We're excited for you, and it's going to be a lot of work, but hey, we feel all the confidence in you, so welcome. But I wanted to thank Dr. Butler right now as well. He's been working like crazy, so I want to say thank you for all your hard work. You just came on and we just threw you to the fire, but hey, we really appreciate it. Just today in our closed session, I was really challenged and blessed by your insight and your discussions and what you've been doing. And so really, I know it's not easy, all that you're doing as well. So all the newbies, welcome. That's how we all that. So I want to make sure you're loved and appreciated in every way. But I really want to take this time to thank all of our administrators right now, all the principals and APs on every campus right now. They have been working like crazy. And I can personally speak to this because I'm the husband of one. And so I told her today that I'm going to personally express my gratitude to all of them. Figuring out this master schedule has been a nightmare. And I see comments from parents, on how come they're not doing this? How come my kid didn't get this class? Or how come there's no 3 periods, first period? I understand that. And it's not perfect. But what you cannot dismiss, though, is the effort and the time that they have put into this. So to all the principals, APs out there, thank you. And I know that you're still working. You're still trying to get through all the comments. You're doing all that you can. So all the parents out there, be patient. They're going to try to resolve everything they can. And so I really want to express my gratitude because next week, game on. It's showtime. And so for all the teachers, for all the kids, this is it. This is the moment. This is it. We're ready. We're ready to start next week. I know it's crazy. It's a week from now, the 24th. I know that's kind of crazy, but I'm excited for the new school year. And the reason why I'm excited because and to see the collaboration with teachers and the teachers that came onto that and to see how they're learning from each other and collaborating and talking, it's been fantastic. So task force team as well, I want to say thank you because all that you did is now going to become a reality in 1 week from now. So thank you for all the task force committee members as well, just for all your time and your energy throughout this whole summer. And you got to understand the summer that they all did this on this own time. It's not like they were getting any special recognition. They did this on their own. So thank you, everyone, for all your time, and the cabinet as well. You guys are rock stars, and so I want to say thank you to all your hard work because next week is it. So it's gonna pay off. It's gonna go well. I'm looking forward 24th, 25th. It's all gonna go well. And until we all get back together again, let's make this.
What's going on here? Thank you. That was very nice. Anybody else? Any comments from board members?
I'll ditto everything Mr. Hahn said. As somebody who lives with an administrator from another district, everybody's working hard right now to get it all going. So we're a week ahead of you at my house, but we're fixing the airplane as it's flying, so we're good.
Yeah. Well, and can I add too, the teachers have been miraculous in all of the marvelous things they've been doing this summer and the professional development they're doing and the flexibility that they have put into this process. I really do feel confident that our students will get a quality education when we bring them back to education, whatever and however it happens. Our teachers will be there for them. And I don't want to forget parents. Our parents have been agonizing this summer about what is best for their students and how to best assist and support them. And we are trying at TUSD to help them with that too, with some professional development for parents this week. And hopefully we can get those glitches worked out and make those really helpful and useful for you too. So thanks to the parents too. And last but not least, our students are miraculous too. They will come through and they will find a way to learn. I really do believe learning will find a way. Anything else? Any other board member? Oh, actually I do have one, I forgot. I do have a 20-year increment of accredited service, an anniversary for classified personnel. And it's a custodian at North High School. Mary Cuellar has been with us for 20 years at that position. So thank you for doing that. And if there are no other comments, we will adjourn in memory of retired teacher Martha Berry and retired maintenance and operations supervisor Geraldine McCalman. Can I get a motion in a second?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Taco
All
time.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All
Bye-bye,
right. Thanks,
everybody.
folks, for sticking with us.
Thank you.
Good night.
Later.
Good night, guys.